My boots had holes in them when I saw her. 43 days on the road from Texas, and what I remember most is the sound of her trying to lift a fence post alone, grunting like she'd rather die than ask for help. My name is Samuel Hayes, and I was a drifter, Colorado Territory, autumn 1878. I'd been riding for 17 years, working ranch to ranch, never staying long enough to belong anywhere. That day in October, everything changed because a woman wouldn't ask music for help. She was Catherine Morrison, 38 years old, widow for 2 years. Her husband Richard had died from an infected cut, barbed wire turned gangrenous. Now she was alone on 50 acres, trying to keep it from crumbling into dust. When I offered to help with that fence, she didn't trust me, but she needed me. And when she looked at my work-worn hands and said, "I need a strong man like you," something broke open inside me. Something I thought was dead began to beat again. This is the story of how a broken drifter found peace, how a grieving widow found love again, how two people built something that lasted 36 music years. The ranch appeared on the horizon around 3 in the afternoon. The gate was falling down, the fences were collapsing, the barn was losing music boards. This was a ranch being lost piece by piece. She was standing music beside a collapsed section of fence, holding 2 wooden posts, music trying to lift them. Her blue dress was torn and dirty. There was blood on her hands where the rough wood had cut her palms. Exhaustion had carved itself into every line of her face. She straightened when she heard my horse approaching. Her hand went to her hip. Not for a gun, but like lies showed self. For a second her eyes showed fear. I was a stranger, a man music on horseback, and she was alone on an isolated ranch. "Can I help?" I offered music, dismounting slowly. "I don't need charity," she replied, her voice trembling with music exhaustion and shame. "It's not charity," I said. "It's work. You need these lifted, I need a place to stop for the night. We both get something we need." She watched me approach, music calculating whether I was worth trusting. Finally she nodded. "I'm Catherine Morrison. My husband, Richard, owned this ranch, gun music. He's been dead 2 years." She said it matter of fact, like reciting a fact rather than admitting ongoing grief. "Tools are in the barn." As we worked through the afternoon, I learned about Richard. A cut on his palm from barbed wire. The kind of injury that happens 100 times a season on any ranch. In a frontier setting without a doctor for 50 miles, it became gangrenous. She'd nursed him through 3 weeks of fever, watching the infection climb his arm like a living thing eating him from inside. When the fever finally took him, she said it was a mercy. We worked until sunset. We didn't talk much, just necessary instructions. But something was happening between us, a recognition. 2 people who understood what it meant to struggle alone. When darkness fell, Catherine invited me inside. The cabin was small, but immaculate. Everything organized with care, despite the impossible workload of one music person maintaining 50 acres. She made dinner with what little she had, beans with salt pork, bread she baked that morning, strong coffee. When we'd finished eating, Catherine looked music at me directly. "You're not from here," she said, not a question. "No, ma'am. I've been working cattle drives out of Texas, moving north and south with the seasons. How long you plan to stay?" I was honest with her. "Day or 2 usually. I move on." She was quiet for a long time. I could see her wrestling with something. Pride, need, fear, all mixed together. This was a woman who had learned to be self-sufficient because she had no choice. "I can't pay much," she finally said. "The ranch barely makes enough to survive. But I have a cabin out back music where the previous hand stayed, and I can feed you if you're willing to work. I need help with the fences, the barn roof is failing, the horses need proper care." She stopped, realizing she was overpaying much. "I know that's not music appealing." "How much?" I asked. $15 a month and food." $15 a month was barely music anything. A good ranch hand made 30 or 40, but I wasn't looking for money, God. I was looking for a place to stop running. I'll stay, I said, through the winter at least. And Catherine, this ranch has value. With work, it could prosper. Her face changed when I said her name. She wasn't used to being addressed as a person. Hearing her actual name seemed to remind her that she was real, that she existed as more than just a problem to be solved. Together, she said quietly, like she was tasting the word for the first time. That night I slept in the small cabin music out back. For the first time in 17 years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. 6 months passed. We fell into a rhythm. Up before dawn, work until the light failed, dinner, sleep, repeat. Slowly the ranch transformed under music our hands. Fences were repaired section by section. The barn roof music was fixed. The horses began to fill out, their ribs less pronounced. The cattle grew stronger. Catherine knew the land in a way I'd never seen before. She could read the weather in the morning sky, knew which pastures needed rest, which horses had been abused and needed gentle handling. I provided the strength and skill with tools. Together, we were better than either of us alone. One afternoon in November, we were expanding the pasture. Catherine was marking lines where new posts should go. I was digging holes. Suddenly, she stopped and looked at me. "Why are you still here?" she asked quietly. "Where else would I go? You said you move on." It's been 6 months. The truth was, I didn't want to leave. For the first time in my adult life, I adjust for the work, but for the partnership. Not just for the work, but for the partnership. "I don't want to leave," I Fuchs said. Then I asked, "Do you want me to?" "No," she said, barely audible. "Then I'm staying." That evening, Catherine asked me to sit with her on the porch. The sun was setting, turning the mountains orange and pink. We sat in silence for a long time. I was so afraid. Catherine finally said that I'd be alone forever. Afraid I couldn't manage this ranch. Afraid I'd die without ever feeling loved again. I took her hand. I didn't speak, but I held her hand and let her know that she wasn't alone anymore. A week later, I kissed her. We were repairing fence in that same section where I'd first offered help. The afternoon was cold and Catherine was shivering. I took off my jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She looked up at me, and there was vulnerability, hope, and fear all mixed together. I leaned in slowly. She didn't move away. When I was sure she wanted this, I kissed her. Gently, got tender. A question and an answer at the same time. When we pulled apart, Catherine rested her forehead against mine. "Stay," she whispered. "Please stay." "I will," I promised. "I'm not going anywhere." We didn't rush into marriage. Catherine had been devastated by loss, and I had been scarred by years of wandering. We needed time to trust that what was growing between us was real. But, as the months turned into over a year together, our music became certain that this woman was my home. But I moved into the main cabin. We started planning music for the ranch's future. Catherine drew sketches on scraps of paper, showing me her vision for better pasture rotation for breeding horses. Her intelligence amazed me. She didn't just think about the land, she dreamed about it. Before I married Richard, she told me one evening, I wanted to breed fine music horses. My father bred them back east, Morgans with exceptional temperament. The bloodlines were something special. But the war changed everything. Richard wanted cattle, so we had cattle. Then he died and I was too tired to dream. "We can do both," I said. "We can have cattle for revenue, but breed horses as well. Your knowledge combined with my hands, we can build something truly special here. Something that will last." Her eyes lit up like I'd given her permission to hope again. It was a look I'd never seen from her before. Genuine joy mixed with possibility. In the spring of 1879, we purchased a fine breeding mare from a rancher near Denver. Catherine had connections through her father's music old horse breeding network. And that mare became the foundation of everything. We brought in a good stallion of what would become a respected horse operation throughout Colorado territory. 3 months later, Catherine gave me a ring. It was her mother's, gold, simple, worn smooth by decades of use. Her mother had passed when Catherine was 16, but she'd kept the ring hidden away all these years, never showing Richard, Jade, saving it for something that mattered. She didn't propose in words. She pressed it music into my palm one evening and said, "If you're going to stay, I want everyone to know it. I want the world to know that you're mine." I slipped the ring on without hesitation. We were married by a traveling preacher, godmade in February of 1880 on a simple day with snow on the mountains. There were no guests, just us and the preacher and the horses standing in the corral as witnesses. We didn't need anything grand or expensive. We had something more valuable. We had peace and we had each other. Years passed. By 1884, 5 years after we married, the horse breeding operation was thriving. The reputation we built with Catherine's knowledge and my work ethic was spreading music across the territory. Buyers came from neighboring states asking about our animals. That's when we brought 3 children to our lives. A raid by Apache had struck a small settlement about 30 miles south. Michael, age 7, Joseph, age 5, and Sarah, age 4, had survived by hiding in a root cellar while the attack happened. Their parents and music 2 siblings were killed. There were no relatives to take them, no government to support, no safety net. They were alone. When Catherine heard about them, she didn't hesitate. She didn't ask me first, didn't weigh the costs, or consider that we were still music building our own life. "We're going to get those children," she said simply. "Catherine, you've never, I don't care. We have the means, we have the space, we have love to give. That's what matters. They've lost everything. We can at least give them a home." The legal paperwork was complicated. It took weeks to arrange with the territorial authorities. But by spring of 1884, they came to live with us. Michael was quiet at first, traumatized from what he'd seen. Joseph was music angry, his small body coiled tight with rage. Sarah barely spoke for the first month, but Catherine had a gift for healing. She moved slowly with them, never music pushing, just present. She let them help with the horses, which seemed to calm their fears. She held them when nightmares came, and music there were many nightmares. She was patient in a way that broke my heart to witness. Within a year, they began to thrive. Michael showed Catherine's intelligence and business sense. He'd watch her manage the books and ask endless questions about every decision. Joseph had my way with horses, patient and intuitive, with a quiet confidence. Sarah had both our best qualities, her mother's vision and her father's capacity for work. By 1893, 15 years into our marriage, the ranch was thriving. We had 60 acres under careful management, 200 head of cattle, and a horse spectrum across Colorado territory. Michael, Gada now 22, was managing the business side with remarkable intelligence. Joseph, 20, was managing the horses with a reputation for quality care. Sarah, 19, was planning to marry a young rancher from the neighboring valley, a good man who understood the land and valued hard work. One evening, Catherine and I watched the sunset from the porch. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Staying here? We could have done something different, gone somewhere else." "No," I said simply. "This is exactly where I needed to be. With you, building something that will last, building music a family." We didn't need music to say anything else, but life isn't kind. In 1895, 16 years into our marriage, a came, the worst anyone had seen in 2 decades. The pasture's music turned to dust. The grass became brown stubble that wouldn't sustain cattle. We watched our herd grow thin. We made difficult decisions about which animals we could keep music and which to sell at terrible prices. The horses we'd bred with such care that represented years of work had to be rationed water. Every decision felt like it was slowly destroying what we'd built. There were nights when Catherine didn't music sleep. I'd find her on the porch at 3 jobs in the morning, staring at the dry land, her face hollow with worry. I'd sit beside her without speaking, just present. She was a woman who had endured so much loss already. Her father, her mother when she was young, her music first husband. I could feel her fear that the land itself would be taken from her too. One music evening, about 6 months into the drought, she said something that terrified me. "You should leave," she said. "You should take what you've earned and go. I won't hold you responsible for this land's dying." I took her face in my hands and looked at her directly. "Listen to me. This isn't your ranch anymore, Catherine. It's our ranch. Our ranch. I'm not leaving. Not now, not ever. We're going to get through this together." "What if we don't?" she asked, and her voice broke. "What if we lose everything? What if I dragged you down music into this? Then we lose it together," I said, "and we build again together. But we don't give up. We don't run. We've faced impossible things before. We'll face this too," she cried then. Deep sobs that she'd been holding back for months. I held her while she cried, promising over and over that we would face this music together, that I wasn't going anywhere. And we did. I dug wells deeper than any I'd seen. We hit rock and nothing else. But on the fourth well, at depths I didn't think were possible, we found water, cold, pure water that seemed like a miracle. We built cisterns to capture every drop of rain. We found underground springs by watching where the earth stayed slightly damper, where certain plants grew with slightly more vigor. We rotated the remaining cattle to parts of the ranch where underground springs kept small patches of grass alive. Michael helped with the business decisions, music about what to keep and what to sell. Joseph worked the water systems with me, learning techniques I'd learned from old-timers over the years. Even Sarah, now married but visiting regularly, helped her mother manage the household with music-rationed water. The drought eventually broke. In spring of 1897, after rains came soft and music steady, the land slowly returned to life. Our herd was smaller than it had been. Our profits diminished, but we had survived. And our love, tested by genuine hardship, became unbreakable. That's when I truly understood. Love isn't about avoiding problems, it's about facing them together. It's about choosing your partner again and again, even when the choice is hard. By our 36th year together, in 1914, I was 75 years old and Catherine was 70. The ranch had recovered from the drought guard and thrived beyond what we'd ever imagined. Our horse breeding operation was respected across 3 territories. We weren't wealthy in the Eastern sense, but we had security, comfort, and something precious. A life we built together brick by brick, year by year. But Catherine's energy, which had always been boundless, began to slow around 1912. Her breathing became labored when she climbed the porch stairs. She'd stop in the middle of the day, sitting down for longer periods, Gadar catching her breath. I tried not to worry, but I could see it in her movements. In fall of 1913, I insisted on bringing the doctor from Denver. He examined her carefully, listened to her heart with a stethoscope music, and spoke with gentle finality. "Mrs. Hayes, your heart is weakened," he said. "It's common in women of your age who've lived strenuous music lives. You need rest, more rest than you've been taking. Avoid sudden exertion, avoid stress." Catherine heard this the way she heard all difficult news, with practicality and grace, but I saw the fear in her eyes. Not fear of dying, but fear of becoming a burden, fear of losing her usefulness. "I can still work," she said immediately. "I just need to let your children help more," the doctor said firmly. "You've built an extraordinary legacy. Let them carry it forward." So, we transitioned slowly. Catherine supervised more guard and worked less. Michael managed the business completely. Joseph took over music, the horse care. But Catherine still walked the property, still checked on animals, still made important decisions. It was harder on her than the physical work had been, the feeling of stepping back, of becoming less essential. In the spring of 1914, we sat on the porch. The ranch was bustling with activity, our children and grandchildren working the land, carrying forward what we'd started. The horses were strong and healthy. The cattle were fat. "I've been thinking about something, Rachel," Catherine said, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "What's that?" I asked, taking her hand. "About that day you stopped to help me with the fence. I think it was the most important day of my life, Rachel. More important than marrying Richard, more important than anything." "Why?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "Because that was when my life really began," she said. "Before that, I was just existing, Rachel, going through the motions, waiting to die. But when you stopped, when you offered to help, when you stayed, that's when I started actually living." I squeezed her hand gently. "You gave me a home, Catherine, Rachel. You took a broken drifter and made him whole. You gave me a reason to stop running." "Maybe we're both grateful," she said, smiling weakly. "Maybe that's what real love is, Rachel. Two people grateful for each other. Two people choosing each other over and over again every single day." That night, we lay in bed together, and I held her close. Her breathing was slightly labored, Rachel, as it had been for the past year, but her heart beat steadily against my chest. We didn't make love. We were too old, too tired, Rachel. But we held each other with a tenderness music of two people who had built a life together and knew exactly how precious that was, Rachel. I stayed awake through most of the night, music, listening to her sleep, knowing that time was running short. I'd lived long enough to understand that music, everything precious, is temporary. But we'd had 36 years, Rachel, more than most music people get, more than I dared to hope for on that autumn day in 1878. The next morning, Catherine didn't wake up. She had died in her sleep, music peacefully, her hands still resting over my heart, Rachel. The doctor said her heart had simply given out. He said there was no pain, that it was a gentle music passing. But the gentleness of it didn't matter. The world had lost an extraordinary woman, Rachel, and I had lost my reason for music living. I didn't last long after Catherine died. 3 months, that's all it took. People said I died of a broken heart. They were right. My heart simply stopped trying, Rachel. But before I died, I made sure our story was preserved. I wanted our children and their children, and all the generations that followed, to know how music all began. The ranch continues today, Rachel. Generations later, it still produces fine horses. The bloodlines we established continue music through the work Michael and Joseph put in. More importantly, it continues on the principles Catherine music and I built it on, Rachel. Hard work, fair dealing, and commitment to something larger than ourselves. But what I'm most proud of is how our love story has influenced the family. Our children married people willing to work alongside them, Rachel. Our grandchildren seek partners who understand that love is a commitment, not just an emotion. The legacy of a working partnership, that's what we left behind. If I could tell you one thing about love and life, it would be this, Rachel. Don't wait for perfect. Don't wait for everything to be easy. Instead, look for someone who's willing to work alongside you. Look for someone who, when the hard times come, and they will come, doesn't run away. Rachel? Look for someone who understands that true love is built piece by piece, day by day. Be the person who stops when you could keep riding. Be the person who doesn't run away. That's what changed my life. Not luck, not fate, Rachel. It was a simple choice I made that autumn afternoon in 1878 to stop my offer help, music to stay when things got difficult. I found something better than what I wanted. I found what I needed. A partner, a purpose, a reason to stop running. Catherine needed someone strong to help her carry her burdens. I needed someone to give my strength to, someone to build a life with. We found each other, not because we were looking, but because we were both willing to be vulnerable. That's what I tell young people now. Love looks like showing up. Love looks like a woman with blood on her hands, too proud to ask for help, and a man music too tired to keep riding, who stops anyway. Love looks like two people too stubborn to quit on the land and on each other. A woman with blood on her hands asking for nothing, a man who stopped when he could have kept riding. 36 years, a lifetime. A love story that echoes through generations.